The Vathran's hope drifted silently in the cold void of space, its once proud hull now a patchwork of scorched metal and shattered windows. The ship's engines had failed during a desperate escape from an ambush, and its systems were on the brink of collapse. Sparks flew from broken conduits, and alarms wailed in the background, creating a haunting melody of failure. Inside the damaged vessel, the alien crew scrambled to stay alive. Captain Zilok, a grizzled veteran with scales like polished bronze, watched helplessly as the lights flickered in and out. He had seen many battles in his time, but never had he felt so powerless. His crew, a diverse collection of beings from different worlds, were panicking. Some tried to make repairs, while others were too terrified to move. "We're not going to make it," murmured the ship's chief engineer, Reth, her blue skin tinged with fear. She wiped away the sweat from her brow, the stress of the situation overwhelming her. "The damage is too much. We can't escape, and the raiders will be back soon." Zilok clenched his fists, his sharp claws digging into his palm. He had always relied on his crew's courage, but now, even they were losing hope. The Galactic Union's emergency channels had been down for hours, and their last known position was so far out in the uncharted sector that rescue seemed impossible. "Captain, we have to send a distress signal," said Taros, a young soldier who had joined the crew only a few months ago. His species, tall and thin with silvery skin, had keen eyes that missed nothing. "We can't just sit here and wait to die." Zilok's eyes narrowed. He had been trained for combat, not for diplomacy, and asking for help was something that didn't come easily to him. The Galactic Union had always been more focused on their own survival, leaving outcasts like his crew to fend for themselves. The Union was vast, and their resources stretched thin. But as much as he hated the idea, he knew that this might be their only chance. He stood up, his claws scraping across the metal floor as he made his way to the communications console. "Do it," he growled. Taros quickly worked his way to the station and began typing. "Sending distress signal," he muttered, his voice tense. "We'll broadcast on all known channels. They'll hear us." The crew gathered around, each one staring at the screen as Taros worked. Zilok couldn't help but wonder if they had any chance of survival. The raiders had struck fast, overwhelming them with sheer numbers and firepower. He knew the pirates would return soon, and when they did, they would finish what they had started. A low beep interrupted the tense silence, and the screen flashed with a bright red light. Taros' fingers froze above the keyboard. It's working," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We've got a response." The crew crowded closer as the screen flickered to life, revealing a single message in plain text. "This is Commander Jack Reeves of the Earth Fleet. We've received your distress signal. Help is on the way." Zilok felt a strange mix of hope and skepticism. The Earth Fleet. He had heard of humans before, stories of their fearsome reputation, their strange, aggressive nature. Some said humans were unpredictable, a species that didn't always follow the rules. But there was one thing Zilok knew for sure. If the humans were answering a distress call, they had no idea what they were getting into. "What is this Earth?" Reth asked, her voice trembling with both curiosity and fear. "Are we certain they will come for us?" Zilok stared at the message, his mind racing. Humans were known for their strength, but they were also fiercely independent. Would they risk everything for a small alien crew stranded in the middle of nowhere? Or was this just some cruel joke? "We have no choice but to trust them," Zilok said finally, his voice grim. "If help is coming, we'll take it. But we have to be prepared. The raiders won't give up easily. We must hold out long enough for them to arrive." The crew nodded, their resolve hardening. If humans were coming to help, they would need to be ready. But Zilok couldn't shake the feeling that this human pilot, whoever they were, would be walking straight into a trap. Outside, the stars continued to twinkle silently in the distance, unaware of the deadly game unfolding. The Vathran's hope floated in the silence of space, its fate now tied to a single human's decision. Zilok looked out at the cold, endless expanse. "Whatever happens, we fight together," he said softly, rallying his crew. "We will not die here." The Vathran's hope drifted silently in the cold void of space, its once proud hull now a patchwork of scorched metal and shattered windows. The ship's engines had failed during a desperate escape from an ambush, and its systems were on the brink of collapse. Sparks flew from broken conduits, and alarms wailed in the background, creating a haunting melody of failure. Inside the damaged vessel, the alien crew scrambled to stay alive. Captain Zilok, a grizzled veteran with scales like polished bronze, watched helplessly as the lights flickered in and out. He had seen many battles in his time, but never had he felt so powerless. His crew, a diverse collection of beings from different worlds, were panicking. Some tried to make repairs, while others were too terrified to move. "We're not going to make it," murmured the ship's chief engineer, Reth, her blue skin tinged with fear. She wiped away the sweat from her brow, the stress of the situation overwhelming her. "The damage is too much. We can't escape, and the raiders will be back soon." Zilok clenched his fists, his sharp claws digging into his palm. He had always relied on his crew's courage, but now, even they were losing hope. The Galactic Union's emergency channels had been down for hours, and their last known position was so far out in the uncharted sector that rescue seemed impossible. "Captain, we have to send a distress signal," said Taros, a young soldier who had joined the crew only a few months ago. His species, tall and thin with silvery skin, had keen eyes that missed nothing. "We can't just sit here and wait to die." Zilok's eyes narrowed. He had been trained for combat, not for diplomacy, and asking for help was something that didn't come easily to him. The Galactic Union had always been more focused on their own survival, leaving outcasts like his crew to fend for themselves. The Union was vast, and their resources stretched thin. But as much as he hated the idea, he knew that this might be their only chance. He stood up, his claws scraping across the metal floor as he made his way to the communications console. "Do it," he growled. Taros quickly worked his way to the station and began typing. "Sending distress signal," he muttered, his voice tense. "We'll broadcast on all known channels. They'll hear us." The crew gathered around, each one staring at the screen as Taros worked. Zilok couldn't help but wonder if they had any chance of survival. The raiders had struck fast, overwhelming them with sheer numbers and firepower. He knew the pirates would return soon, and when they did, they would finish what they had started. A low beep interrupted the tense silence, and the screen flashed with a bright red light. Taros' fingers froze above the keyboard. It's working," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We've got a response." The crew crowded closer as the screen flickered to life, revealing a single message in plain text. "This is Commander Jack Reeves of the Earth Fleet. We've received your distress signal. Help is on the way." Zilok felt a strange mix of hope and skepticism. The Earth Fleet. He had heard of humans before, stories of their fearsome reputation, their strange, aggressive nature. Some said humans were unpredictable, a species that didn't always follow the rules. But there was one thing Zilok knew for sure. If the humans were answering a distress call, they had no idea what they were getting into. "What is this Earth?" Reth asked, her voice trembling with both curiosity and fear. "Are we certain they will come for us?" Zilok stared at the message, his mind racing. Humans were known for their strength, but they were also fiercely independent. Would they risk everything for a small alien crew stranded in the middle of nowhere? Or was this just some cruel joke? "We have no choice but to trust them," Zilok said finally, his voice grim. "If help is coming, we'll take it. But we have to be prepared. The raiders won't give up easily. We must hold out long enough for them to arrive." The crew nodded, their resolve hardening. If humans were coming to help, they would need to be ready. But Zilok couldn't shake the feeling that this human pilot, whoever they were, would be walking straight into a trap. Outside, the stars continued to twinkle silently in the distance, unaware of the deadly game unfolding. The Vathran's hope floated in the silence of space, its fate now tied to a single human's decision. Zilok looked out at the cold, endless expanse. "Whatever happens, we fight together," he said softly, rallying his crew. "We will not die here." Back on Earth, the message from the Vathran's hope had reached military command. The signal had come through loud and clear, a desperate cry for help from an alien crew trapped in an unknown part of the galaxy. But when the message was first received, there was hesitation. A small crew, stranded in a far-off region, with no guarantee of rescue, and the potential for an ambush. Was it worth the risk? General Marcus Hale sat in his command center, staring at the screen that displayed the distress signal. The blueprints of the Vathran's hope were being analyzed by his team, and the situation seemed dire. He knew the Galactic Union wasn't well known for offering help to outcasts like the Vathran's hope's crew. It was far from a priority, and the Earth fleet was stretched thin, dealing with other threats. Yet something about this particular message didn't sit right with him. It wasn't just the urgency in the alien captain's voice. It was the fact that this message had come from the far reaches of space, an area where even the most advanced ships would be vulnerable. "What's our move, General?" asked Captain Lydia Foster, an experienced officer who stood by his side. She was calm but clearly concerned. "The risks are high. We don't even know who these aliens are, or if they'll be grateful for our help. If this is a trap." Hale turned his chair slightly to face her. His expression was unreadable, but his decision was clear. "Send a response," he ordered. "Tell them Earth is coming." Lydia hesitated. "Are you sure? We don't have the fleet tow." "I said send it." Hale interrupted, his voice firm. "One ship, one pilot. That's all we need. We can't let them die out there." Lydia nodded slowly. "Understood, sir. I'll make the arrangements." As she left, Hale stared at the screen. A part of him knew they were taking a risk, but he couldn't ignore the message. It was more than just about saving lives. It was about something deeper, something that had been growing inside him for years. The Earth fleet, once a quiet and isolated force in the galaxy, had been rising in strength and reputation. Humans were no longer the weak newcomers they once were. They had proven time and time again that they could fight, adapt, and survive in ways that no other species had anticipated. This was their chance to show the galaxy what they were made of. Meanwhile, on a small military base located in the hills outside of New York, one man was already preparing for the mission. Commander Jack Reeves was known across Earth as the best fighter pilot the fleet had ever seen. He wasn't just skilled with a fighter jet. He was a master of tactics, of reading the battlefield, and above all, of surviving. But Jack didn't do things the easy way. He had always chosen the toughest challenges, the most dangerous assignments. Now, as the request for help from the Vathran's hope arrived, Jack had already made up his mind. He didn't need much information. He had heard of the Galactic Union and their way of dealing with outsiders. This was a rare opportunity, and he would take it. He quickly received the orders from General Hale. "Commander Reeves," the voice of his superior crackled over the comms. "You've been selected for a special mission. You'll be heading to the coordinates we've received from the alien distress signal. We've already begun working on a strategy, but you're the only one we trust to handle this personally. A rescue. Don't fail us." Jack smiled slightly at the challenge. "Don't worry, General," he replied coolly. "I'll be back before you know it." The Raptor X, Earth's top experimental fighter, stood ready on the launch pad. Jack had flown the ship countless times before, but this would be different. This mission wouldn't be about fighting in familiar territory, where Earth's enemies were known and predictable. He'd be flying into an unknown part of space, with nothing but his instincts and the trust of the Earth fleet behind him. As Jack climbed into the cockpit, he made a final check on the systems, ensuring everything was running smoothly. The fighter was fast, deadly, and equipped with advanced technology, but it would only be as good as its pilot. Jack knew this was no ordinary mission. It was a statement. He wasn't just going to save a crew. He was going to prove something to the galaxy. With a roar, the Raptor X lifted off the pad and shot into the sky. The fighter's engines hummed, the vibrations echoing through the cockpit. Jack's mind was focused. He had flown through storms, faced overwhelming odds, and fought battles that others would call suicide missions. This would be no different. Back on the Vatharan's Hope, the alien crew clung to the last shreds of hope. Zilok, their captain, stood at the communication console, watching the screen for any sign of progress. His crew, while grateful for the unexpected response, couldn't shake their doubts. Would a single human pilot really be able to help them against the raiders? Are we sure we can trust this human? Reth asked once more, her voice filled with uncertainty. What if it's a trick? The raiders could be watching. Zilok glanced at her, his eyes hard. We don't have a choice. If we don't take this chance, we'll be dead within the hour. Besides, I've heard stories. The humans are known for doing the impossible. Maybe this one can pull it off. Outside the viewports, the blackness of space seemed endless, as if mocking their helplessness. But in the distance, there was a flicker of light, a single dot in the vast expanse. Zilok's heart beat faster. Could it be? Was help truly on the way? Then, without warning, a streak of light blazed across the sky, a small but powerful figure against the stars. The Raptor X had arrived. The Raptor X shot through the dark void of space, its sleek form cutting through the endless black like a predator on the hunt. Inside, Commander Jack Reeves gripped the controls tightly, his focus unwavering. The message from the Vatharan's Hope had been clear. They were in danger, and time was running out. As Jack neared the coordinates, a string of raider ships appeared on his radar. Their dark silhouettes loomed ahead, and Jack's eyes narrowed. These weren't the usual pirates. He could tell by the way they moved, coordinated, deadly, like a pack of wolves closing in on their prey. This is where the fun begins, Jack muttered to himself, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. He had faced more than his fair share of threats, but this felt different. These raiders were more than just a nuisance. They were a serious problem. Jack ran a quick systems check on the Raptor X. His fighter was equipped with the latest Earth technology, advanced energy shields, pulse lasers, and a cloaking system that would give him the element of surprise. He had trained for missions like this, but facing multiple ships at once would be a challenge. His HUD, heads-up display, blinked with incoming fire from the raiders, signaling that they had detected him. The pirates wasted no time, opening fire with their pulse cannons. Jack quickly swerved to the side, dodging the blasts with ease. Nice try, he muttered, pressing a button to activate the cloaking system. The Raptor X shimmered and disappeared, becoming nearly invisible to the raiders' sensors. The pirates hesitated, confused by the sudden disappearance of their target. They began scanning the area, but Jack had already locked onto their position. He swung the Raptor X around, flying in tight, unpredictable arcs. He engaged the pulse lasers, cutting down one raider ship with precise accuracy. It exploded in a flash of light, debris scattering in all directions. But the fight was far from over. The remaining raiders began to regroup, quickly realizing they were no longer facing a lone ship. They started to change their tactics, moving in pairs and setting traps to corner Jack. But Jack was prepared. He had seen it all before. Another pirate ship came into his line of sight. Jack waited, holding his breath. As soon as the ship was in range, he fired. The pulse laser hit the ship's engines, sending it spiraling out of control. The raider ship collided with another, creating a massive explosion that rocked the area. 2 down. But there's still more of you, Jack muttered, his hands dancing over the controls as he locked on to the next target. Outside, the battle raged on. The Vatharan's Hope sat floating in space, its crew watching the spectacle unfold. They could hardly believe their eyes. The human pilot had appeared out of nowhere, turning the tide of the battle with ruthless efficiency. Every move he made was a calculated risk, and yet he moved with a confidence that only a seasoned warrior could have. Captain Zilok watched from the bridge, his sharp eyes following the Raptor X as it weaved between the raider ships. He had seen humans fight before, but he had never seen one move like this. Fluid, unpredictable, and precise. It was almost as if the human pilot was reading their every move before they made it. Impressive, Reth said softly, her voice full of awe. This human, he's different from what I expected. Zilok nodded, his expression unreadable. The humans are not like other species. They may be young in the galaxy's history, but they are fierce and resourceful. This pilot is showing us that. Jack's voice suddenly crackled over the comms, cutting through the tension in the alien ship's bridge. This is Commander Reeves. I've cleared the area of raiders. You're welcome to breathe easy for a moment, but I wouldn't get too comfortable. They'll be back, and we need to move now. Zilok's eyes narrowed. The human was right. The pirates would regroup, and this wouldn't be the last of them. But for now, they had a chance to fight back. Captain, Taros said, his voice tense. The human is right. We need to act fast if we're going to escape. The damage to the ship is more extensive than we realized. We can't stay here much longer. Zilok turned to his crew. Prepare the ship for departure. We'll make our move as soon as we can, but we'll need the humans' help to get us out of this mess. Jack didn't wait around for permission. He could hear the urgency in their voices, and he didn't need to be told twice. He set a course for the Vathran's Hope's position and activated the engines. His fighter zoomed through the debris field, expertly weaving between the wreckage of the raider ships. As he approached the Vathran's Hope, Jack's comms crackled again. Commander Reeves, this is Captain Zilok. We're ready to move, but we'll need your help to get clear of the raiders. They'll be back, and we're in no shape to fight them off again. Jack smiled slightly. That's what I'm here for, Captain. I'll cover you. Just keep your ship intact. The Vathran's Hope's engines roared to life, and Jack guided the alien ship out of the debris field, staying close enough to protect it but far enough to avoid the raiders' fire. As they moved into open space, Jack fired a few warning shots at the approaching pirate ships, sending them scattering in all directions. Nice work, Zilok called over the comms. We're out of immediate danger, but we're not out of the woods yet. Jack kept his eyes on the horizon. He knew the pirates wouldn't give up that easily. They would regroup, and when they did, they would come back with a vengeance. But for now, he had bought them some time. We'll be ready, Jack replied, his voice steady. Let's get you home. The Vathran's Hope soared through the black emptiness of space, its engines sputtering but holding steady. Commander Jack Reeves stayed close, his Raptor X always hovering just out of reach of the raiders, ready to strike if they came too close. But the silence in the void was unsettling. The raiders had been scattered for now, but Jack knew they would regroup quickly. This wouldn't be over so easily. Inside the Vathran's Hope, Captain Zilok stood at the helm, watching the endless stretch of stars ahead. He couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty gnawing at him. Yes, they had been saved, temporarily, but what would happen once the pirates returned? Would the human strange fighter be enough to protect them again? Captain, Reth said from her station, her voice tight. The ship's damage is far worse than we anticipated. The hull integrity is failing. If we don't find a safe place to repair soon, we'll lose control. Zilok clenched his fists. I know. We don't have much time. He turned to Taros, who was monitoring the radar. Any sign of the raiders? Taros hesitated before speaking. They're moving in a wide formation. They're regrouping. It's only a matter of time before they start closing in again. Zilok nodded. Then we need to find a place to hide. Fast. Just then, Jack's voice crackled over the comms. I've been monitoring the area. There's a nearby asteroid field. It's not much, but it could give us some cover. If we can make it there, I'll have a better chance of holding off the pirates while you make repairs. Zilok felt a wave of relief. a hiding spot. Anything to give them a chance to breathe. Lead the way, Commander. We'll follow. The Vathran's hope shifted direction, and Jack guided the crew toward the asteroid field. The field was a maze of giant, jagged rocks floating in space, a perfect place to hide, but also a trap for the unwary. The only problem was that it could also serve as the raiders' next ambush spot. Still, it was their best shot. The Raptor X darted through the maze of asteroids with practiced ease, its cloaking system keeping it hidden from the enemy. Jack's eyes never left the radar as he guided the ship expertly through the debris. His mind raced. How long did they have? An hour? Maybe less. The raiders would be coming, and when they did, Jack would be ready to fight. The Vathran's hope followed closely behind, weaving in and out of the larger rocks. Jack's voice came through again. Stay sharp, Captain. This is a dangerous place, even without raiders around. We don't want to get caught in the crossfire or crash into anything. Zilok's voice came back, steady but with an edge of impatience. We'll be careful. We just need time to make repairs. As they moved deeper into the asteroid field, the tension in the air grew thicker. Each passing moment seemed to stretch on forever, the silence broken only by the occasional ping of radar or the hum of the Vathran's hope's failing systems. Then, without warning, a loud crackle rang through the comms. Captain, Taros shouted. The raiders are closing in faster than we thought. We need to prepare for battle. Zilok's heart pounded. The pirates were here already. It had been too easy to hope for a reprieve. We can't fight them in here, Zilok said, his voice hard. Not without risking the ship's destruction. We need to get to an open space, but we'll have to buy some time. Jack's voice came through again, calm and measured. I've got your back. Just hold tight. I'll give you the opening you need. The asteroid field was a deadly maze, and Jack knew that getting the Vathran's hope out of it without being hit was going to be nearly impossible. As soon as he saw the first raider ship come into view, he engaged the cloaking system again, disappearing into the rocks. The pirate ships passed by, unaware of his presence, their large guns scanning the area for any sign of their target. Jack waited until the raiders had moved into the perfect position. With a burst of speed, he appeared from behind a massive asteroid, firing his pulse lasers with precision. A raider ship was caught off guard and exploded in a burst of flame. The others scattered in panic. Jack pushed the attack, hitting another ship and causing it to spin out of control. I've got 2 down, Jack said, his voice steady. But don't get too comfortable. They're coming back with reinforcements. Zilok gritted his teeth, frustration building. We need time. We can't keep up with this. Taros quickly checked the radar. Captain, there's an abandoned mining station just ahead. If we can make it there, we might be able to repair the ship while Jack holds off the pirates. Zilok glanced toward the station. It was a long shot, but it was the only option they had left. Prepare for the jump. We're going to make a run for it. Commander Reeves, keep them busy for just a little longer. Jack's voice was filled with determination. You've got it, Captain. Just stay close, and I'll clear a path. The Vathran's hope blasted through the asteroid field, its engines roaring as it made a desperate dash toward the mining station. Jack followed close behind, his fighter darting in and out of the rocks, picking off raiders as they appeared. His pulse lasers struck with deadly accuracy, destroying one pirate ship after another. The raiders were getting desperate now, their coordination faltering as Jack cut through their ranks. But it wouldn't be enough. He knew the pirates wouldn't stop until they had everything they wanted. The Vathran's hope was on the edge of the mining station now, and Jack's heart raced. Would they make it? The mining station loomed closer, a dark silhouette against the stars. They were almost there. Just a little further, Jack muttered under his breath, weaving between asteroids and dodging fire from the raiders. The final stretch was the hardest. The raiders regrouped, their ships closing in from all sides. Jack's pulse lasers blazed, cutting through the enemy fire as he formed a protective barrier around the Vathran's Hope. Finally, with one last burst of speed, the Vathran's Hope reached the mining station, and Jack pulled away, breathing a sigh of relief. "We made it," Zilok said, his voice filled with relief. "Now, we repair and prepare." "Thank you, Commander. You saved us." Jack exhaled, but his mind was already focused on what came next. This fight isn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The mining station was small, barely a blip on the radar compared to the vast emptiness of space. But it was a lifeline. Temporary shelter for the Vathran's Hope, and a much-needed repair station. The Raptor X hovered nearby, Jack's eyes scanning the area, waiting for the next wave of raiders. Inside the station, the crew of the Vathran's Hope scrambled to repair what they could. Taros and Reth worked quickly, their hands moving with practiced efficiency as they patched the damaged systems. The ship's hull was cracked in several places, and the energy shields were only at half strength. They didn't have much time. Captain Zilok stood at the command center, his sharp eyes glued to the radar screen. "How long until the repairs are done?" he asked. His voice was strained, a sign of the tension he was feeling. "We need at least another 30 minutes to get the power core stable," Taros replied, sweat trickling down his forehead. "But we can't guarantee it'll hold long enough to get us out of here." Zilok cursed under his breath. The raiders were out there, closing in fast. Every second counted. "Then we'll make it work. We don't have a choice." Jack's voice crackled through the comms, calm as ever. "I've got your six, Captain. You just focus on getting that ship in the air. I'll keep the pirates busy." Zilok clenched his fists. "We can't rely on you forever, Commander. This is our fight now." "I'm not going anywhere," Jack replied, his tone firm. "I'll hold them off as long as I can. But you need to be ready to move when the time comes." Zilok nodded, gritting his teeth. He knew Jack was right. The fate of the crew rested on their ability to escape together. Outside, the Raptor X sat in the shadow of the mining station, hidden from the view of the approaching raiders. Jack kept his eyes on the enemy ships on his radar. The pirates were coming in, slowly at first, but their numbers were growing. Soon, there would be no way to avoid a fight. He activated the cloaking system once more, disappearing into the background of space. The raiders flew past, unaware of his presence. Jack's grip tightened on the controls as he lined up the first target. With a swift movement, the Raptor X dropped out of cloaking and fired a barrage of lasers at the nearest pirate ship. The explosion was immediate, a brilliant flash of light against the darkness of space. The raiders scattered, their ships breaking apart in all directions. Jack pushed his fighter to its limits, dodging incoming fire and taking down one pirate after another. But even with his skills, Jack knew this couldn't go on forever. The raiders were getting smarter, coordinating their attacks. They were starting to learn how he moved. The pirates weren't going to give up easily. "Commander, we finished the repairs on the shields." Reth's voice came through the comms. "We're ready to launch when you give the word." Jack's pulse quickened. Perfect timing. "Get ready to move, Captain. I'll cover you for the last stretch." Zilok's voice came through, filled with resolve. "Understood. We're on our way." As the Vathran's Hope powered up its engines, the raiders made their final approach. They had regrouped and were now coming in fast, their ships bristling with weapons. The Vathran's Hope was still vulnerable. Its engines were repaired, but the damage to the hull was a ticking time bomb. The pirates would have no mercy. Zilok gritted his teeth. "It's now or never," he said. Jack's fighter emerged from the shadows once more, lasers blazing. He took out one raider, then another, keeping the pressure on the pirates. He could feel the weight of the fight pressing on him. His fighter's systems were pushing the limits. Every shot he took, every maneuver he made, brought him closer to exhaustion. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. The Vathran's Hope lifted off from the mining station, engines roaring as it shot through the asteroid field. Jack led the way, his fighter zipping through the debris like a ghost, leaving the pirates in the dust. But the raiders were relentless. They regrouped and closed in, forming a circle around the Vathran's Hope, intent on trapping them in the asteroid field. "This is it," Jack muttered, sweat beading on his brow. The situation was growing worse by the second. He had to create an opening, a way for the Vathran's Hope to escape, but he couldn't do it alone. "Commander," Zilok called over the comms, "we need to break free now. Can you keep them off us long enough?" Jack's heart raced. He couldn't let them down. "Not now." "Stay close," he replied. "I'll clear the way." Jack pushed the Raptor X into overdrive, weaving between asteroids and raiders. He fired his lasers, hitting the pirates with pinpoint precision, taking down 2 ships in rapid succession. But for every pirate he took down, 2 more appeared in their place. The enemy was closing in. "I can't keep this up forever," Jack shouted through clenched teeth. "We need to break through now." Zilok's voice came back, calm but urgent. "We're going for it. Hold on." The Vathran's Hope suddenly veered to the left, dodging a barrage of pirate fire. Zilok made a break for it, charging forward with the speed of desperation. Jack pushed his fighter to the limit, flying just ahead of the ship, engaging in a dangerous dance with the raiders. He knew this was it. If they didn't make it out now, they wouldn't make it at all. With one final blast from his pulse lasers, Jack took down the last of the pirate ships that were in their path. The remaining raiders, confused and disoriented, hesitated. That was all the Vathran's Hope needed. "Go," Jack yelled. "Now." With a roar, the Vathran's Hope surged forward, breaking free from the asteroid field and leaving the pirates behind. Jack followed closely behind, ensuring the raiders didn't regroup in time. As the 2 ships soared through space, the tension began to fade. They were free. For now. "We did it," Zilok said, his voice filled with relief. "Thanks to you, Commander. You saved us all." Jack's grip on the controls loosened, exhaustion setting in. "It's not over yet," he said quietly, "but we'll make it through. Together." The Vathran's Hope drifted in the silent void of space, the stars stretching out like a never-ending sea of light. Captain Zilok stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the horizon, a sense of quiet relief filling him. The pirates were gone for now. They had made it out of the asteroid field, and the Vathran's Hope was free. But Zilok knew better than to think it was over. The raiders were still out there, and their next attack would come when they least expected it. The peace they had won was fragile, temporary. "How long until we reach the nearest safe zone?" Zilok asked, his voice low. Taros, who had taken over navigation, checked the star maps on the console. "If we maintain this course, we should reach the neutral sector in about 6 hours. But we'll need to make sure the ship's systems hold up until then. The damage is extensive." Zilok nodded. "Do what you can. We can't afford to slow down now." As he turned to leave the bridge, Reth's voice echoed from the engineering deck. "Captain, we're running low on fuel. The repairs have drained a lot of our reserves. If we don't make it to a supply station soon, we'll be stranded." Zilok's stomach sank. They couldn't afford to be stranded in deep space. Without enough fuel, they would become easy prey for the raiders, or anyone else who might come across them. "Understood. We'll push through as best we can. Keep me updated on the fuel levels." Meanwhile, in the control room, Commander Jack Reeves was looking out of the small window of the Raptor X, his mind racing. The battle had taken its toll on him. He was tired, his body aching from hours of flying, his mind drained from the constant vigilance. Yet, he couldn't rest. Not yet. Jack had been the first to volunteer for the mission, the first to take action when the Vathran's Hope had been under attack. Now, as they limped through space, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were not out of danger yet. He took a deep breath and pulled himself away from the window, heading for the bridge. As he walked, his thoughts turned to the crew of the Vathran's Hope. They had been through so much already, yet they remained calm and focused. Zilok was a natural leader, and the crew respected him. But Jack knew that even the best leaders had limits. When Jack entered the bridge, Zilok looked up. "Commander, how are you holding up?" Jack gave a half-smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'll be fine. Just tired." Zilok nodded. "I understand. You've earned some rest, but we still have a long way to go. We're running low on fuel and resources. We'll need to be careful." "I'll keep an eye on the raiders," Jack replied, his voice steady. "They won't catch us off guard again." Reth's voice came over the comms, breaking through their conversation. "Captain, the fuel reserves are critically low. We need to find a supply station, or we won't make it." Zilok's face tightened. "How far are we from the nearest station?" Reth hesitated. "At least 6 hours, Captain. We won't make it unless we find an emergency supply depot sooner." "We'll push on," Zilok said, his voice resolute. "We can't afford to stop." As the hours passed, the crew continued their work. Taros kept watch over the ship's systems, constantly adjusting course to conserve fuel. Reth worked tirelessly in the engine room, making small repairs to keep the ship running. Every minute they spent in space, they came closer to exhaustion. In the cockpit, Jack kept his eyes on the radar. The pirates were still out there, but for now, they seemed to have disappeared into the vastness of space. Jack knew they would be back, but he couldn't afford to dwell on that. There were more immediate concerns. "We've got a problem," Jack muttered to himself, staring at the radar. A small blip had appeared, too small to be a pirate ship, but large enough to be a threat. He squinted, zooming in on the radar. What in the world? The blip moved erratically, then seemed to stop completely. Jack leaned forward, unsure of what he was seeing. Was it a malfunction in the radar, or was it something else entirely? He reached for the comms. "Zilok, you'd better take a look at this. I've got a strange blip on the radar. It's not a pirate ship, but I don't like the look of it." Zilok's voice came through, sharp and clear. "We don't have time for surprises, Commander. I'll be right there." Zilok arrived on the bridge and looked at the radar. He frowned as he saw the small, erratic blip Jack had mentioned. "That's odd," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Any idea what it is?" Jack asked. Zilok tapped a few buttons on the console, trying to get more data. "It doesn't match anything in our database. It could be a derelict ship, or it could be something worse." "Should we investigate?" Jack asked. Zilok hesitated. The risk was high, but they couldn't ignore the possibility of finding resources, or worse, walking into an ambush. "I think we should check it out. We can't afford to pass up any chance to find supplies." Jack nodded. "I'll prep the Raptor X for a closer look." Jack's heart sank. This wasn't the rescue he had hoped for. Whoever this was, they had been left to die in this forsaken place. He knelt beside the body, checking for any signs of life. There were none. The person was long gone. But then something caught his attention. A small device, still attached to the figure's wrist. It looked like a communicator, though it was ancient, covered in rust and grime. Jack carefully pried it free, wondering why it hadn't been scavenged by the raiders or anyone else. He activated the device, and a faint flicker of light appeared on its screen. Slowly, words began to form, blurry at first, then becoming clearer as the device powered up. "We are in peril," the voice on the device said, the words faint and distorted. "The ship lost. Supplies. No more. Time. Help." Jack's eyes widened as the message continued, though the transmission was fading fast. Whoever had sent it had been in desperate need of help, just like the crew of the Vathran's Hope. The words were broken, but the meaning was clear. Someone, or something, had been stranded here, and they had not made it in time. A chill ran down Jack's spine. He had always been a man of action, but this was different. The message was a warning, not a cry for help. They had been too late. But Jack's mind raced. If there had been a distress signal, that meant the ship had been communicating with someone. Who? Where? And why? His comms crackled to life. "Commander, report back. We're picking up more pirate activity. They're closing in on your location." Jack swore under his breath. The pirates were back. And now, he was stuck on an abandoned ship with no way to fight back. "I've got something," Jack replied, still clutching the communicator. "I'm heading back to the Raptor X. Get ready for a fight. We've got more trouble on our hands." As Jack made his way back to the airlock, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The wrecked ship wasn't just a trap. It was a message. Someone had wanted them to find it. And now the pirates were closing in, perhaps because of the very same reason. There was no time to waste. Jack had to return to the Vathrend's Hope and prepare for the fight ahead. But what had he really uncovered here? And what did it mean for the crew? As he boarded the Raptor X, he looked out at the wreckage once more, wondering what secrets it still held. Secrets that could change everything. The Vathrend's Hope slowly adjusted its course, heading toward the mysterious blip. Every crew member was on edge, but they had no choice. If it turned out to be a derelict station or ship with supplies, it could make all the difference between survival and disaster. As they drew closer, the shape became clearer. It was indeed a ship, a small, long-forgotten vessel drifting in space. The hull was scared and worn, as though it had been abandoned for years. It didn't look like anything the crew had seen before. Zilok glanced at Jack, who was already preparing his fighter for a closer investigation. "Be careful, Commander. We don't know what we're walking into." "I'll be cautious," Jack replied, his voice steady. "We'll find out what it is, together." As the Raptor X moved in closer, the crew watched, hearts pounding. The mystery of the strange ship was unfolding before them. What could it be? A trap, or a much-needed source of hope? The Raptor X shot through the void, its engines humming as it neared the mysterious ship. The crew aboard the Vathrend's Hope watched anxiously from the bridge, eyes fixed on the radar as Jack carefully piloted the fighter closer. There was no telling what awaited them, but they had no choice but to investigate. Captain Zilok stood at the console, his hand steady despite the tension in the air. "Keep your eyes open, Commander," he said over the comms. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Jack's voice came through clearly. "Understood, Captain. I'll take a look and report back." His calm, focused tone gave the crew some reassurance, but the uncertainty of the situation hung in the air like a thick fog. As the Raptor X closed in on the derelict ship, Jack's eyes scanned every inch of the vessel. It was a small, battered craft, its hull scarred from years of neglect. The ship was drifting aimlessly, its engines long dead, but there were no signs of damage that would suggest a recent attack. "What do we have here?" Jack muttered to himself, his fingers dancing over the controls as he activated the ship's sensors. "It's not much to look at, but there's power on board. Barely enough to send out a signal, but enough for me to detect." He maneuvered the Raptor X into a docking position near the derelict vessel. His heart pounded in his chest as he activated the external scanners, trying to find out more about the ship. "There's life support on board," he said, his voice tense. "It's weak, but it's there. Whoever or whatever is in there, they're alive. Barely." The crew of the Vathrend's Hope exchanged uneasy glances. Zilok's voice came through the comms. "Jack, be careful. This could be a trap." Jack didn't respond immediately, his focus entirely on the ship in front of him. "I know, Captain. I'm going in." Inside the Raptor X, Jack prepared for the worst. He checked his weapons one last time, ensuring his sidearm was secure. His nerves were steady, but his mind raced with possibilities. Who could be aboard the derelict ship? Was it a trap? A distress signal from a stranded crew? Or something else entirely? With one last deep breath, Jack opened the hatch of the Raptor X and stepped out into the cold, sterile air of space. He activated his jetpack, guiding himself gently toward the airlock of the derelict vessel. The ship seemed to loom before him, its broken exterior casting long shadows in the dim light of the distant stars. When he reached the airlock, Jack hesitated for only a moment. The door was sealed shut, and there was no sign of life. No movement, no sounds. Yet the faint life support reading gave him hope that someone, or something, was still aboard. He activated the airlock, and with a soft hiss, the door slid open. Inside, the ship was eerily quiet. The walls were covered in dust and debris, the once bright interior now faded and dark. The air was stale, and Jack's breath came in visible clouds as he moved deeper into the ship. He activated his flashlight, scanning the area for any signs of life. "Hello," Jack called out, his voice echoing in the emptiness. "Is anyone here?" There was no response, only the faint hum of the ship's life support system in the background. Jack moved carefully down the narrow corridor, his hand hovering near his sidearm. The ship felt abandoned, too abandoned. The silence was oppressive, as if the vessel itself were waiting for something. As he turned a corner, he froze. There, in the middle of the room, was a figure slumped against the wall. A person, or what was left of one. Their face was gaunt, pale, eyes wide open and unblinking. It was clear they had been here for a long time. The smell of decay hung heavy in the air.